Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. We've had the pleasure of some blue skies in London, so I hope wherever you are, you've had some as well. We are really excited to be delivering another webinar in partnership with Manchester Metropolitan University. I'm Faye McGuinness. I'm the Director of Programmes and Services Education Support. I'll be hosting today, but we have an excellent panel who will be doing most of the talking, so you haven't got much of me. So what are we going to be talking about today? So our panel are going to be exploring practical research-informed strategies, tools and tips to help you really think about how you can create cultures where your staff feel supported, valued, and hopefully motivated to stay. We are going to be sharing the slides after this webinar, and we are going to be recording it as well. So just to save you if you feel like you need to take lots and lots of notes, we will be sharing those slides. So let me just start by introducing the panel. So firstly, we've got Dr. Steph Ainsworth, who is a reader and co-chair of the Education Policy and Practice Research Group at Manchester Metropolitan University. Steph was originally a primary teacher, but is now an education researcher with a passionate interest in teacher wellbeing. We've also got Dr. Jeremy Oldfield, who is a reader and deputy head of the School of Psychology at Manchester Metropolitan University. And Jeremy conducts research into resilience, both in the UK and in high-risk populations in Guatemala. And we've also got some other great speakers. So we've got Celine Doyle, who's an assistant head and mental health lead at Burnage Academy for Boys. We've got Kiara Kelly, who is a science leadership team and trust development lead. And we've got Connor Doody, who is a science teacher and ITT mentor. So a great panel for you today. Please do pop any chats into the question and answers or the chat, and we will pick those up at the end to make sure that you've got space for your questions to be answered. But I'm going to now hand over to Stephanie and Jeremy.
Thanks, Faye. It's really exciting to be here. Thanks very much for coming along after what I'm sure has been a very long day for you all. We're going to talk to you about a particular aspect of our research, as Faye said. So we've just come to, well, we're coming towards the end of a 3-year project looking at teacher resilience. We did another webinar a few months ago focusing on factors that are related to individual teachers and what they can do. But today's session is all about promoting positive school culture. So it's more about the school environment. So before we get into some kind of practical strategies around that, we'll just give you a really brief overview of the project so that you can see where the research has come from, hopefully to try and give it a bit of credibility. So just to say, the context behind our project was the concerns around teacher wellbeing, which I'm sure you're all very aware of. I don't know if you've seen these latest statistics. The Teacher Wellbeing Index, led by Education Support, has been published recently, and it found that teacher wellbeing is the lowest it's been since 2019. So that is obviously a real concern. 76% of all staff are stressed, and 86% of senior leaders. And thinking about culture specifically, it also found that 49% of staff felt their organisation's culture had a negative effect on their mental health and well-being. So I think culture is a really key topic when we're thinking about teacher resilience. So in our research, we were interested in, well, what does it mean to be resilient? As a primary school teacher myself, I know how rewarding teaching can be, but I also know how it can be really demanding. So when I came into university as a teacher educator and a researcher, this was something I really wanted to look at. Sometimes resilience is quite an unpopular word because it has connotations of people needing to just be tougher. It's somebody's individual fault if they're not able to cope with the challenges that are thrown at them, whereas we're taking the kind of opposite stance on that and using a social ecological approach to resilience. So I won't go through all the text on there, but just to say the main point at the bottom is that resilience is generally thought now in the research literature to be not a trait, so not something that sits inside of you, but actually a process that operates across systems. So it's this idea that if somebody is struggling, we need to think about what's happening in that system which includes the individual, but isn't just limited to the individual. So we've got to think about all the different factors that might be leading to somebody having a difficult time. So this is just a bit of a pictorial representation of what we mean by a social ecological approach. The basic idea is that if we're wondering how to make teachers feel more resilient, we need to think about stuff at the individual level in the middle of our concentric circles here. So things like their personality factors might affect that. Things to do with physical health might have an impact on how you're also feeling within yourself. But also we need to think about these kind of broader environmental factors. So what's happening around them in school, what support networks are available, what are the broader kind of institutions and policies beyond the school that are influencing them as well. So when we're thinking about teacher resilience, we're interested in what are all these different factors that are kind of happening at once, and how do they impact what we call resilience-related outcomes. There's lots of different outcomes that we associate with resilience, but we're focusing today particularly on well-being, job satisfaction, and risk of burnout. So what we actually did in our project, we started off with a large-scale survey. So we had 3,000 teachers filled that in. If you're one of them, thank you very much. The survey went out to teachers across England. So you may have taken part in that. It was a while ago now. And that survey was it aimed to measure what factors are most highly associated with those resilience-related outcomes. So we measured lots of different factors, both at the individual level, but also at the school level. And we looked at statistically which ones are most associated with well-being, job satisfaction, and burnout. And we'll come back to that in a second. Once we had that quantitative data, we then used that to inform what we've called ecology mapping in schools. This is where we went into 8 project partner schools and we looked at what were the different factors that were affecting teachers in those schools. And we did little group interviews where we gave teachers cards with names of the factors that had been found to be important in the survey, and asked them to talk about them in terms of, you know, which ones had played the biggest role in their working lives, which of these factors was working really well in their school, which were the things where they felt could be improved even further, ideas for change, etc. And then we used that data to inform some interventions in the schools, where we spoke to school leaders about what came out of the ecology mapping, as I say, what was working really well, but also what were teachers' ideas in terms of little tweaks that might help with this resilience process across the system. And then we left schools to it for a while. We let them decide if there was anything they wanted to change or not, because we know schools are really complex and there's lots of different things going on and various reasons why certain things might not be able to be changed. We came back a few months later to talk to school leaders, talk to teachers again, and just see how things were going there. And we're now at this final stage of the project where we're sharing insights with other schools in various ways. And we're also creating a teacher resilience toolkit, which we're very busy with at the moment, and that's going to be officially launched in March. So it's a bit of a watch this space for that, and there'll be a QR code at the end if you want to go on our distribution list for that to receive it once it's ready. So that's where the research underpinning our talk has come from. Just to give you a very brief idea of what came out of the survey that we did at the beginning. These are, on the left, the individual level factors that we measured. Most of those are quite self-explanatory, self-esteem, emotional intelligence, etc. Self-efficacy is in there as well, which means the extent to which you believe you're capable of something. So, you know, you might think about self-efficacy in behaviour management or self-efficacy in teaching a particular subject. We looked at sort of general teacher self-efficacy there. And then here we've got the contextual level factors that we measured. Again, most of these are quite obvious in terms of what they are, but the first one maybe needs unpicking a little bit. This variable of conflict between beliefs and practice is something that we measured to get a sense of to what extent did teachers feel they could teach in the way that they wanted to. Did they have any kind of value conflicts going on in terms of their teaching practice? And then we looked at whether the green or the pinky orange ones, which of those were having the highest association with our outcomes in purple here, the well-being, job satisfaction and burnout. We also measured lots of other things like age, gender, ethnicity, etc. So in terms of what we actually found, just as a summary, when we looked at the top 5 predictors, so which ones were most highly associated with these 3 resilience outcomes, we had this kind of green versus pinky orange split that you can see here. So you'll notice that under well-being, 4 out of 5 of the top predictors of well-being were individual level factors. So this was suggesting that if your self-esteem is high, you're more likely to feel well in yourself. If you're engaging in positive self-care, if you've got an optimistic mindset, etc., those are all going to really help you. Workload as a school level factor came in as well as being really important for well-being. When we looked at job satisfaction and burnout, we found that it was the school level factors that were most important here, with the exception of self-esteem, which was also important. And you'll notice that school culture made it to the top 5 for both job satisfaction and burnout, which is the thing we're going to be talking about today. So what we found quite interesting about this table, just before I move on, is that it's kind of suggesting that when we think about how can we make teachers more resilient, we need to think about, well, what do we mean by resilience? What's the sort of outcome that we're looking for? Because I know often we think about resilience in terms of individual level strategies, getting people to do mindfulness, go for a run and all those kind of things. And this research sort of suggests that those are all really good things and they will likely help you feel better in yourself, but they won't make you feel more satisfied with your job necessarily. And they might not prevent you from burnout. So it's kind of just making people aware that we also need to think about how to help people be more satisfied in the work and to not feel burnt out by it, which is more about things going on in the environment, maybe. So very quickly, because I don't want to talk too long, but this is just one of the definitions that's out there in the literature around school culture. So it's about the sort of beliefs, norms, values that are implemented or kind of lived and experienced within a school. And when you try to kind of nail that down and think, well, what does it feel like to have a positive school culture? These are some of the things that came out of our data when we spoke to teachers. So when teachers talked about cultures in their school, they said they really liked the team identity. They really valued it when the culture felt inclusive, when they felt they could say no, in appropriate times, that there was a culture of optimism amongst the team, all those kind of things. So that just gives you a bit of a sense of what we mean by a positive school culture. I'll just hand over to Jess now.
Hi everybody. Yeah, so we talked a bit about what school culture is. I'll just add one thing to what Steph was saying there as well, that you might have heard the difference between school culture and school climate, which is just interesting just to share. So school climate would be about the kind of the daily experience that you have, whereas school culture is more like the enduring values and norms that you experience within that school. So you could say like, oh, the leadership has been really supportive this term. That would be like something would help us to understand the school climate. Whereas if you talk about, well, it's that we've got a tradition here of like really open communication and trust and transparency. That's more like the school climate. So that's the kind of things that we're looking at, the deeper level, which is school culture. And this slide just says some of the important things about why it's important. So why should we focus on it? There's 3 things top thing there about why it impacts upon teachers. So it's going to make teachers feel like they actually want to stay in a school. They don't want to leave. It's associated with, which is our research there, that Ainsworth study about lower levels of burnout and increased job satisfaction and well-being, and it leads to more engagement with teachers as well. So if you have a positive school culture, you can have more engagement from your teachers. They're going to be more motivated. And if we weren't happy with that, we can think about it also impacts upon the students as well. So a positive school culture has real benefits in terms of students getting higher grades. Then there's an association between a positive school culture and better mental health and well-being in students, and it helps them to improve student engagement and actually learning more about social emotional learning as well if you've got a positive school culture. So there's some of the reasons why it's so essential to focus on school culture. And so from our study, we were looking with our case study schools, we found like school culture being really important. And we kind of found that there's two things here. There's the informal ways of being and responding versus the formal policies and processes and practices. And you can't have one without the other. They're two things. They're very intertwined with each other, and they affect each other. But that's the kind of the basis of what school culture is. So this is a quote from one of our primary school teachers that was about how their head teacher was, that they create just their personhood. It creates a sort of culture of mutual trust and openness just because of the way that they are as a leader. So that's sort of thinking about what strategies could we put in place that are about us and how we respond, how we are as a person, versus other more formal policies and practices. So in the same school, they had sort of training for leaders on constructive and sensitive observation feedback. So the policy as well as the way of being, kind of those two sort of driving strands are really important when we're thinking about school culture. So on the next slide, we just got like another quote here about that informal way of being. So when you're trying to promote a positive school culture, when you're trying to promote that trust, then it's good to think about how you are as a person, how you are, particularly as a leader, how you are foreseen and how you act, because that's going to shape and affect the whole school ethos. And then the other one is just thinking about then there's more formal processes and policies that also affect the school culture. And this is an example about working parties as well. So thinking about those two strands, what are the sort of informal ways of being that affect the school culture, as well as the formal processes and policies that affect it as well. So on our next slide, we've developed what we call the votes model of school culture. So it's only provisional, so don't hold us to it just yet, but this is some of our initial findings. We're just trying to think about, if we take school culture and we kind of break it down, could you remember this or the votes model, and think about, do you have those things within your school? So we said V is about having a voice. Is it inclusive? So basically ensuring that every staff member is heard. So I think that's just something, is that happening in the school that I'm working in right now? Is that the leadership making sure you've got the voice? Do I feel like I have a voice? So that's the V. The O is then for optimism and positivity. Like, is the culture fostering a sort of positive, forward-looking culture? To what extent are we optimistic or positive in our approach? The T then is about trust and autonomy. So how do we empower staff through trust and giving them a sense of autonomy? The E is about engagement or in belonging. So how do we build a strong sense of community? And finally, the S is safety, or psychological safety, or well-being. So how do we create a safe and supportive working environment? So we're trying to hope that if you can remember that sort of votes model, the different, and what they stand for, you can think, to what extent is your school like that? Do you have those things in place, or what strategies could you put in place to make sure those things are met? So these are the kind of the core of what school culture is. So we're going to hand over in a minute to the teachers to actually really talk about break those things down, that votes model, to think about some actual tangible specific strategies that relate to that model that hopefully might help you to implement some of those things within your school. And we've got the two strands again, so thinking about the informal ways of being versus the formal policies and practices.
Yeah, so just taking what we thought we'd do is take each aspect of the votes model in turn, and just get some thoughts from our lovely teachers who are on the call, who are also project partners in the research. So it's been a real privilege working with them to find out what schools are doing to try to create these positive cultures in practice. So starting with voice, this idea of ensuring every staff member is heard. I don't know if any of the three of you on the call have got anything you want to say about what that looks like in your school, maybe. We've got
I'm happy to say something, Steph.
Please do.
Yeah. So as regards to sort of when we're asking for staff surveys, we make sure very much so that we're including every member of staff in the school. So making sure that our staff surveys aren't just directed at teaching staff, that they're also directed at support staff, and even our site team as well, and our administrative staff that come into contact with students on a regular basis. So we really make sure that we have a really sort of diverse range of questions in our survey, so that everybody feels that they can contribute. After every survey that we do, we always communicate back with a you said, we did. So when we look and evaluate the feedback, we make sure that we always feed back to staff on, we acknowledge that the majority of you said this, and this is what we have chosen to do and what we've chosen to act on. So everybody's clear and feels that, you know, their contributions in the survey are valued.
Yeah, thank you, Celine. That's really interesting. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Kira and Connor, to that before we move on to the next one.
Yeah, I think just from a curriculum leadership point of view, as that's my main role, we have a weekly meeting, CP time, for curriculum development. And that's a really collaborative thing. It isn't just sitting at the front and imposing things on your staff. We try and take a lot of staff voice on board, and again, anonymized so that people feel able to share. But most of the time we have that culture where people can just share verbally as well. And it's, you know, obviously taking a period of time to, you know, people feel safe, I guess, to share those views in the room, as well as doing it anonymous as well. And it's really open, you know, all opinions are valued. And if we can't act on it, I think it's really important to explain the rationale as to why, and just be really open. So if it's a really good idea, we take it, we work with it, and again, giving that person the platform to celebrate that it was their idea and for their development as well. But if it isn't feasible, you know, give them the respect of explaining, I've looked at it, this is why we can't make it work, just so that they feel really valued in what they've contributed as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's interesting to hear that common theme of voice going through, you know, whether it's a survey or it's in that kind of dialogue. And it sounds like it's maybe important to have both, because you might get kind of different things communicated in those different forums, if you like. Thank you for that. So then the next one is about optimism. So how do schools create this sort of positivity really as a team? I don't know if any of you've got anything you want to share about that. And again, the ideas that are on the slides are all things that came from across our 8 project partner schools when we were talking to them.
Yeah, we can share for that one as well. We have quite a lot of whole school policies on this one. So celebrating successes, we have a weekly waggle at the start of our briefing every Wednesday, where a member of staff that does something really successfully stands up and shares that as a little 5-minute snippet of CPD. And it's obviously celebrating them as well. And it will be solutions focused, because it's normally linked to what we're focusing on that particular term. With the positive vibe, at the minute, we've got our SWAG event calendar. SWAG was a team that was set up years ago, staff wellbeing action group. And it's something every day just to boost, because autumn 2 can be really challenging. And I think it's being mindful of those pinch points and getting ahead of it, trying to put something in place so that you don't have to wait until a member of staff burns out before you do something. You're preempting it, because we know this is a difficult time of year. So just having that little calendar of just a little motivational thing every day it helps with the positivity in school.
Yeah, could you give us an example of the everyday thing?
So today there was a coffee wagon outside. So when you come in, it's like an external, like proper coffee one. So they had like little festive specials on as well. So just as you're coming in, you can grab a coffee, and it just puts you in that nice mood. And then, like you said before, when you're going into your students and you've had that sort of little pick me up at the start of the day, it does sort of leak into the rest of the day as well.
Yeah, that's really nice idea. Thank you. I don't know if there's anything you want to share on the positivity side, Celine.
Yeah, like similar things. So we put on twice every half term we have some event for staff, and it is similar things. So it will be a coffee. We have coffee wagon in the morning. We've had a muffin stall. We also have head massages. So we have they can come into school, and we have an Indian head massage person comes into school, and not all staff have to sign up, obviously, but if staff want to sign up, that's available to them as well. And we have a weekly sort of bulletin and a sort of half-termly bulletin, and the focus on that is really promoting success stories. And we also have within the leadership team, we really try to model optimism in our emails. So we're very conscious of the fact that we try, and for every email that we might send out, that might be a reminder, something that may have not been done. We always make sure that with every one of those is at least 3 other emails that are sending a positive vibe, sending a positive thank you to everybody for something that they've done and contributed to the school. So we always try to make sure it's a good balance.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I know one of the things that came out across the data was this sense that those teachers really value the food and the coffee and those kind of things, but it's also about the way that the day-to-day things are done as well, like you say, like the emails and everything. So it's like what you both said there, both schools have said, it's that really nice combination of the two, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been just another thing as well is that when we send whole staff emails as well, we on leadership we limit it to 3 things. So not sending a large email out with lots of information that we expect staff to read and digest. It's just has to be just a maximum of 3 clear bullet point things.
Yeah, to avoid like overload. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. So the next one is about trust. So there's a few ideas on the slide about the leader sort of modeling vulnerability and sharing, being able to say no, autonomy, etc. Is there anything you wanted to share about concrete ways that you feel that works in your schools?
Yeah, I don't mind. So every Monday we have after school CPD, and for a proportion of the year, we're allowed to work on particular aspects of our teaching. And it's all low stakes, and it's the idea that we've had the opportunity to practice it with other teachers and have that opportunity to get it wrong. We won't necessarily be observed on that in lesson, but it's more trial it, and if it doesn't work, then we'll try something else. There's no emphasis on it has to be perfect straight away. And I think even me now, 8 years into teaching, benefits from that. But it must benefit the ECTs and the trainees significantly. So yeah, it's just the idea of it might not go right the first time, but this is why we host these sessions, so it's perfectly fine as long as you learn from it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like being trusted to take risks, and yeah, I like that. Yeah, thank you. So
I think the vulnerability thing I think is really important to me. Because I've worked at a few schools where it's quite draconian, and it's not, what Connor's just outlined there. It's not, you don't feel very trusted in your classroom. There's one way to do it, and you will do it this way, and there isn't that trust that there's different approaches. So I think for me, it's really important as a leader to model that vulnerability. And I'm not quite sure, I'll go and check it out for you. It's okay to say that you don't understand something, and even things like, I'm not well, I need to go home and look after myself. I'm leaving early today because I've worked overtime last night. You should do the same. So I think whenever, especially if you're mentoring someone or it's people in your team, they need to see that, you're taking those steps as well, and it's okay for them to do the same and look after themselves.
Yeah, it's a lot about modeling. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. Thank you for that. Is there anything you want to add there, Celine, or should we move on to the next one?
Just a very human, from a leadership point of view, a very human approach to your staff. You're human, they're human, and we've got to understand that we've got staff members that will be having difficulties, for lots of different reasons, and it's really important to have that human approach towards them. I can talk a little bit about, so we have a pastoral team in school, and I'm sure you can imagine our pastoral, as with in all schools, deal with some very complex cases, and it can be a lot for them sometimes. So what we've introduced for each member of the pastoral team is one day of the week they can have a late start to the day or an earlier finish, and they really appreciate that, and it's, you know, they work together as well. So we've developed this approach now. So if one of them wants to have an early finish on one day, within that team, they take on things for each other to allow that member of the team to have that early finish for whatever. Would you like me, Steph, to talk about our wellbeing days at this point, or?
Yeah, go for it.
So it used to be, when we first introduced it, it was just teaching staff. But we've now rolled it out across the whole school. So regarding whatever your role is within the school, every member of staff has 3 wellbeing days in a school year. So that means they have 1 wellbeing day every term. And the way it works, I know some staff on here, some teachers on here, or members of leadership on here might be thinking, how do you work that with cover? I know in primary schools it may be more difficult. In secondary schools, what we do it via sort of faculties, and everybody within the faculty is willing to cover each other's lessons. So we as a leadership team will cover up to 2 lessons a day, and then the remainder of the lessons we ask in the faculties, and everybody does it. You do it for me, I'll do it for you. And it works, and it means every member of staff in the school gets an opportunity to have 1 wellbeing day every term.
Yeah, that's lovely, and it's that real sense of, in terms of culture, that reciprocity, isn't it? Like everyone knowing that, you know, they'll give because they know they're going to get it back, and everyone supporting each other. Yeah, that's really nice to hear about how it actually happens in practice, because I think as you say, people often ask that, don't they? Well, how do you do it? So that's really, really useful. Thank you. So the penultimate one is engagement and belonging. Teachers in our study talked a lot about things like singing from the same hymn sheet, having a strong ethos. Is there anything that any of you'd like to say about that in practice?
Yeah, so from an extracurricular point of view, our school's quite good at, well, we have a football team, for example, that will get together on a Friday from various departments. So it's pretty good to discuss common issues, but more, it's just time for 90 minutes just to switch off. And I think from that comes conversations and ultimately builds friendships outside of your department. And that's not just football, it can stretch to running clubs, all sorts. I mean, they're the 2 that a couple of members of staff that I know are involved in, but it's just the idea that Friday usually is a space for after school switch off, getting into the weekend. But again, maybe share some stories and pearls of wisdom while you're at it with other teachers from the departments that might be struggling in a similar way. So that's been really useful. Yes,
it's that really relates to the belonging side of it, doesn't it? Yeah, and kind of across quite a lot of the schools, we had lovely bits of data about teachers talking about feeling like, well, it's more like a family than a job, and and be friends as well as colleagues. All those kind of things, I think, can be really, really help keep you going, can't they? Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just add to that one as well. What's really nice is it's not just, there's a mix of people there too, senior leadership, middle leadership. So again, if you're just in your classroom as a general teacher, you're having conversations with people who professionally you probably wouldn't speak to usually. So again, it makes you feel more comfortable and welcome too, which is nice.
Yeah, and I bet that's particularly important, isn't it, in a big secondary school where, there might be people you just wouldn't normally connect with. Yeah, thank you for that. Anything else on engagement before I move on to the last one?
We do a trust inset as well every year. So we've just had the one 2 weeks ago where we bring together all science departments from across the trust, and we have a shared day, sharing a best practice, but really the focus of it now is sharing workload. If we're part of a trust, there's no good reason why we shouldn't be sharing resources and dividing out work. because we have similar ways of working, similar policies and things as well. So that's been sort of a work in progress for reduction in planning and workload to try and support with wellbeing as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, so really like mobilising that potential across the trust for sharing and collaboration even further. Brilliant, thank you. Anything you want to add there, Celine, or shall we move on to the next one?
We've got sort of quite a generous leadership time allocation for our middle leaders as well. So anybody a middle leader has any teachers like 14 to 15 out of 24 5 hours, and we have that quite protected for them. Things like even when all communications that go out, all our emails from, especially from leadership, you know, we have they have a tagline at the bottom, and tagline, you know, all about think well-being, work-life balance is important. I feel it's convenient for me to email at this time, but you don't need to respond. Making that clear all the way through. Our home. I think within that as well, we're looking at exploring shared values. Our homeschool agreement as well is really important that we share with parents. It quite clearly outlines to parents what they can expect from teachers, but also it quite clearly outlines what teachers expect from parents as well. And we ask all parents to sign that whole school agreement, and so we are all working together for the best interest of the student. And when we have meetings with parents, we refer back to that homeschool agreement quite a lot, reminding parents that, you know, we've got their son at the centre. Sorry, we are a boys' school, so I do say son. We've got their son at the centre of everything, every decision that we make, so that is very, very clear.
Yeah, so it's that shared values being embedded not just in the school but across the community, and yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. And then finally, the bit about safety. So that's come up a little bit already, but about why does it feel psychologically safe to be in that culture? How do people experience that? What does that look like? As well as physically safe, because people did also talk about in the data how it was really important for the environment to feel safe and comfortable as well, just in terms of things like it feeling like a nice place to be and nice rooms, nice buildings, that kind of thing. Anyone want to share about that one?
I don't mind sharing on that one. I think what we have in our school, we have some trained mental health first aiders, and I've done the training as well. And I think just having someone that has been trained in the tools to help someone in crisis is really important as well. And that's shared with staff, that they know who they can go to if they're having a bad day, that there's someone there that they know that they can go and speak to. We also have a thing that a member of staff has started on a Friday morning for men's mental health. We've had loads of sort of positive messaging around the school following International Men's Day. Students had assemblies about it. We had a member of staff that spoke really candidly about his own experience. And I thought that was really powerful as well, as something that can sometimes get neglected. So that morning on a Friday is where male staff can come in, have a coffee and just talk about things that affect them. So my partner goes to that, and he finds that really, really valuable as well.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that you know, thinking about culture and this culture around mental health awareness and support, it's crossing the staff and the pupils as well, which is really nice, isn't it, to have that integrated approach. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add there, Celine.
Every fortnight we have staff supervision, which is led by our school counsellor. So that is after school. It is very well attended, and it's very well attended by a lot of ECTs or people that are quite new to the teaching career. They've got a lot out of those sessions. It's like I said, it's our school counsellor that runs those sessions, and some of the feedback that we've had from those sessions has been incredibly positive. Staff saying it's great because they feel that they're not alone. when they attend these sessions, they realise that everybody has these problems. They're not isolated, and hearing other people giving them ideas, or letting them think, what a great job they are doing. So they come out of those supervision sessions, feeling quite positive. So they run every fortnight, for all staff. Same as before, we do also have mental health first aid trained in school. We also have an employer assistant programme, where staff can access support 24 hours a day through the assistance programme. Our assessment and reporting calendar, we ensure that is shared right at the start of the year. So from right at the start of the year, staff can plan and prepare. They know when open evenings are happening. They know when all year parents' progress evenings are happening. They know when data needs to be inputted. So they are fully aware from right at the start of September. So we're not dropping anything on them at all last minute.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, really interesting to hear. And I think I was thinking as well about the fact you're saying there's really good take up on the supervision. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I know often when I've spoke to school leaders, they say that you don't get very high take up always on the employee assistance programs. Like when they get the figures, it says that we're paying for this great service and people aren't using it as much as we would think. So it's interesting that there's something about when it's in a person in the school, maybe, that, I don't know, that feels different. So yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so we're aware of time. Let's see where we're up to. So we've got a couple of activities now. Oh, sorry, Jez, you were going to introduce this.
Oh, Steph, I was going to jump in, and actually, because we've got quite a few questions, so I thought it might be worth jump in with some questions, and then we can move on to the activity. So there was quite a lot of questions around supervision, Celine. So there were some questions around when you said all staff, are support staff included, and is that group supervision or is it individual supervision?
We do groups. So our school counsellor leads a group supervision session. But myself and another member of leadership, because we've recently been through the Trauma Informed Schools project, and we have had supervision training. So myself and another colleague, we do one-to-one supervision with our pastoral team. So we meet regularly with our pastoral team to do supervision one-to-one. But then there's the group supervision that's run by our school counsellor every fortnight.
Brilliant, thank you. We had lots of questions about how is the coffee funded. So yeah, how is the coffee funded? Lots of interest in that. Does that come from the school budget?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think ours does.
Ours doesn't. It began with someone who knew someone, and then the coffee wagon came because she, I think, thought teachers love coffee. We pay for our own. But it's just nice to have it there, as well as, if you don't have time to stop off and get one, it's there at the school door.
Yeah.
We allocate some money from our budget for staff wellbeing.
And coffee included in that.
Yeah. So their coffees and pastries and their massages, they don't pay for.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then there were some questions around the wellbeing days as well that you allocate, and whether that's in place of leave for things like personal days, going to Christmas plays, or is that in addition to those other days of leave?
No, it's as well. So our staff will often choose to use their wellbeing day. Some staff will choose to use their wellbeing day for things like going to watch their child in a concert, or going to attend a wedding or a graduation. And we obviously, we do allow other staff members, obviously, if there, for example, if there is a wedding or a funeral, we do allow them to go. But most staff tend to use their wellbeing day for things like that.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then someone mentioned that all staff are included in surveys. I think that was you, Celine, that you make sure that all staff are included in surveys, and other ideas. So the question was, do you include site staff, other support staff, cleaners? Is it everybody?
Yeah, so we'll design the survey so that if so they don't tell us who they are, but they might tell us what sort of like group. So are you in admin? Are you on the site team? And it will then, when they do that, it directs them to specific questions. So it's the way we design the questionnaire.
Yeah, great. And then lastly, there was a question about how can governors or governing bodies support wellbeing in schools? And there was just a question if you have any sort of practical advice and suggestions for governors. And that's to anybody that would like to take that.
To take that same human approach that we do as leadership, really. And I think a lot of our governors, you know, it often comes up in questions. They will ask us specific in governor meetings, and they will ask us specific questions about what are we doing for staff wellbeing. It's very much at the forefront of them, of their conversations with us as well. It is something that is important to them, and that is why obviously we lead on wellbeing from head down, really. And yeah, we are regularly asked those questions by governors about staff wellbeing and our initiatives.
Yeah, there's something about them providing support, but also that accountability piece, and making sure that there's a balance there. Great. Okay, I will hand back over to Jeremy now for a couple of activities.
Yeah, thanks. I thought it'd just be good to have a bit of time just to reflect on maybe some of the things that you've heard that might be beneficial, that some things you might want to take away. So just thinking about our 5 sort of broad themes of voice and optimism and trust, engagement and safety. And then thinking about that split between the informal ways of being and the formal policies and practices. We just want you to think about some of the things that we put on the slides have been quite general, and appreciate Celine and Connor and Kieran have said them more specifically, but how could you adapt any of those strategies, or you know, what can you take away? What can you do in your school now that's sort of based on, you know, if this model's helped you to sort of articulate or think about school culture, what could you sort of take away? Because so as I said, some of the things we put on the slide were quite general. The teachers here have just sort of put a bit more meat on the bones there, but is there anything that you want to, that you can take away? So yeah, it'd be good to sort of share that in the chat if there's anything that you want to, that you're sort of reflecting on now, thinking, oh yeah, this is something that we could do in our school.
Or alternatively, it might be that there's something that you want to kind of share that you're already doing, but that you think, you know, it really aligns with one of those dimensions or more of them.
Maybe Steph, do you want to look at activity 2, so you can sort of maybe think about reflecting on that?
Yeah,
we've got at the same time.
Got a few things coming through. Should maybe look at those first, and then we'll move on. Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, so Sarah said about ensuring we share teachers' wins and accomplishments in staff meetings. Yeah, absolutely. That's quite a nice quick win, if you like. I know obviously nothing's completely easy, is it? Because there's so many things to think about, but yeah, that's really nice. Exploring staff peer supervisions more, and somebody's saying thank you for sharing the framework. Somebody's shared in the chat. Anna likes the waggle that you were talking about, Kira, and the success stories that you were all talking about in staff meetings, giving key dates out to all staff. So yeah, that bit about planning ahead. Yeah, that's something that quite a lot of our schools decide. You know, some schools were doing it already, but others decided to tweak that based on the feedback, because that came up a lot in the data about staff finding it really important, knowing what's coming up. Or Kira, you've put a comment in, haven't you, as well, about having a mental health lead, that being really important in each school. Yeah, really important point. Yeah, a few people talk about staff supervision. Wellbeing Wednesdays has come up. Free coffee and pastries all day for staff once a term. That's really nice. Yeah, and some more food ones. Free fruit and breakfast. I know when I went into Celine's school to collect some data, I was very jealous because everyone was eating fish and chips at parents' evening. this kitchen had made them. That was another food one. Yeah, lots of really nice ideas there. Wellbeing walks, more food options. Lovely. So yeah, I think because of time, I'll move on to the next one. So the next activity, which I think is quite important because I noticed in the chat further up, people were saying, oh, well, how does that work though? And where does the money come from? And those kind of questions, which are really good questions. So it might be quite useful to also reflect on what are some of the barriers that might prevent you from implementing some of these strategies, and are they barriers you can overcome? Are they not? Just any reflections on that, really. And while people are typing away, obviously feel free while people typing to chip in Celine and Kira and Connor on that. Like, what are the hard things about, trying to create a positive culture? What are the barriers? If I know I'm putting you on the spot here, so don't worry if on the call you've not nothing springing to mind.
I think it's time of year, isn't it? Like autumn 2 is always challenging. Then when there's mocks around, marking time is always challenging. We had Ofsted in 2 weeks ago, and we knew that was coming. That's challenging. So I think if you know that you've got challenging times, it's building buffers in to counteract them almost, and just preempting. Don't just let your staff go through it and say, oh, it's just a stressful time of year. Well, if you know that, then put something in place, sort of calendar it and map it. I've done that in science, where before I map the CPD that we do in the meetings, I map the wellbeing, particularly in difficult half term. So for this half term, it's been, we're going to have a hot chocolate station this week, just so we know that we've got those little things to look forward to, and pick me ups when it's difficult.
Yeah, and I suppose just to recognise as well, isn't it? It's like a way of, although the hot chocolate might not fix, the problem,
yes.
kind of recognise it and say, look.
And it's saying that to staff as well. I am well aware that this isn't going to solve all your problems, but it's a gesture of appreciation for all the work. Because often it's just a thank you, isn't it? Like, you don't really often get them in teaching, and it goes a long way when someone recognises all that time and work that you're putting in as well.
Yeah, that's come up a lot across the data, that teachers know that leaders can't fix everything, but they a really strong theme is that they just want that acknowledgement and the thank yous and the sort of recognition of quite what things are like on the ground. Yeah, thank you for that. So I think the points in the chat are not so much about barriers, but more just other really great ideas about what people are doing, which is lovely for people to have access to. So yeah, one Amy's saying about, sorry, this chat keeps moving. Head sharing a weekly emails to celebrate successes of staff outside of school. That's quite nice, isn't it? It's like kind of that human, links a bit with what Celine was saying about that human approach, kind of celebrating people as individuals. And then Justine has made a really important point that as well as those more concrete things like coffee, it's really important that staff feel valued in that more everyday sense. Careful and useful feedback is an important part of that. Yeah, absolutely. Michaela's mentioned about barriers, trying to bring teachers and support staff together. Definitely, yeah, and that has something that's come up in the interviews as well, that particularly because most support staff are on contracts where there's no time, at the beginning of the day or after the day to kind of speak to people. And yeah, you just mentioned that they have different timetables within the day as well. Yeah, that is a real challenge. So thank you for those, because obviously it's important when trying to think what you might try out or not try out in a school. It's trying to think through those barriers and think what is feasible, are there workarounds, or is there a different strategy that's needed, because because all schools are different, aren't they? Particularly across the different age phases as well. So, Faye, we've only got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, well,
so
I think we've got time.
Share our last. Sorry, we're just going to say we don't really need to do this slide because it was already covered in the activities, really. But if there's anything else you want to add in terms of what you might take away from the session, I know some people have already done that already. It might be nice just to reflect on that in the chat, and it's really interesting for us as well to sort of get a sense of what's been helpful and if there's anything you'll take forward from it. And then finally, just to say, we've got the slides will be shared, but we've also got here for you now the QR code. If you want to hear more about the project, you can just leave your email address in this form, and then we will keep you on our list for letting you know updates, including when the toolkit is released. But yeah, I'll be quiet now today, sorry.
No, I mean, you can see from the comments that there's some really useful stuff from everybody. So thank you. Lots and lots of really useful comments. So a couple of last questions and then we'll wrap up. So these questions link together. So anybody that wants to respond to this is, what do you do when you offer lots of stuff, but staff get used to it and want more? Or what do you do when you offer stuff and staff don't take it up? So if anybody's got any advice on that last question, and then we will wrap up.
Well, I'll be honest, we have in some of our staff, our regular sort of staff surveys that we have on staff wellbeing, we have had some suggestions back that we increase the number of wellbeing days that we offer staff a year. And sometimes it's just having those conversations with them and just outlining, you know, how much we are doing for a school, and like how sometimes why we can't offer that. What would be the implications in school if every staff member was given 3 days off every term? So it's just, like I say, it's just an open and honest conversation where you allow them to make their point of view, and then you explain why it's not possible.
Yeah, but it's a good question, because that is a tension that's come up across the interviews in the data, that it's like, you've only got so many resources to give, and there's always going to be more that people want. It's tricky.
And I think there's something about the ongoing conversation about what people want and need, and don't just assume that because we've done something for so long that is still what the need is. So, that ongoing communication is obviously really important as well there. Thank you. So I'm going to get everyone wrapped up by 5 o'clock. So just to say thank you to our panelists. It's been incredible. There's been lots of useful information and tips. I think some of the key takeaways here is that we know that focusing on school culture has a direct impact on how we personally feel in schools with our own well-being. So actually focusing on culture can have a real direct impact on the experience of education staff. Culture isn't something that just stops and starts. It's ever moving, it's ever growing, it's ever changing. So it's something that we have to pay constant attention to. But I think what our panelists have told us here is that there are small steps, there are small things that we can do that don't have to be too grand or too expensive, that can start to shift and make a difference in school culture and make it feel positive. So I hope that you've taken lots of those useful tips away with you. We are going to send out the slides. We are going to send out the recording. We're also going to put a survey link in the chat. And we'll also be sending out a survey in the follow-up email. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes at the end just to complete that, it really helps us just understand what you thought about the webinar, and really helps us shape our kind of future webinar program as well. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening and have a good rest of the week.